Hello,
Yeah.
everyone, and welcome back to Galactic Reviews. This week, or actually just today, we just finished watching the first episode of the new Marvel TV show, Moon Knight. So, we're just gonna go episode by episode and do reviews on them. Sometimes you might put two episodes in one review, depending on how much information and detail is found in that one episode. This week, we're just doing episode one. So, the brief synopsis of episode one is alright. So the character Steven has, I suppose you could say, just a split personality, and he bounces back and forth between consciousness and unconsciousness. And whenever he loses consciousness, apparently he just kills people. And he's losing his mind because he's regaining consciousness and there's just dead people around him. And he's seeing, I'm just gonna say, a giant ancient Egyptian deity following him from time to time, as well as hearing voices in his head. So, in a nutshell, he's just losing his mind, and that's pretty much all episode one is about.
Pretty much.
Overall, as a entertainment piece of art, I can admire it, but also I don't because it doesn't explain how he became Moon Knight. But it
Much
hints
like
at,
most,
which I
most,
find
much. Yeah.
even more confusing, is that his split personality, the one that when he loses consciousness, the personality he is then, is a mercenary, which is what he's supposed to be generically.
Yeah, that's the one thing I didn't quite get is why they chose Steven to be the one that was the main
And
for
isn't,
us
yeah,
instead of Mark Spector, which is the main
unless
before.
unless they explain later and he's been doing this for a few years, which would make sense because at some point he does lose control and his lesser chaotic personality is the one mostly in control. So unless they're doing that, so he's been around for a few years and he's, you know,
Well, I mean, if that's the case, then they gotta then explain where he's been the last couple years when
which
everything's gone down.
I feel like it's going to, since he finds a phone hidden in his house and it has phone calls from two people. One of them is the one that he talks to. The other one was, I just went blank on his name, Dunbar?
Something like that. Yeah.
So hopefully we'll get to see them soon. Well, we obviously know from the trailer that we get to see the girl he was talking to. Whether or not we get to see the guy, we don't know. So hopefully they'll shed some light on who he is and what he has been up to for these past few years. So other than that, I'm not really sure what else to say. I
I thought
didn't
the
hate
opening
it.
scene was weird.
The opening,
Where he was putting glass in his shoes. I
yeah,
didn't know what to think about that. I was like, that's weird.
I
Like,
don't know if that's
there's a different
a,
way to make it look like he is insane, but that was not the way to do it.
well, I'm
That
not
just
sure
comes
if
out of the
that
blue
was
and nowhere.
in a like Egyptian punishment, like shattered pottery in your shoes
And if it
or
is, they didn't
sandals.
explain it, so they just expect you to know this.
Yeah.
So
So I'm not
either
really
way,
sure
it's something that's at fault
because
here.
he has his representation of the deity he's in service to has the scales of judgment. So other unless he's trying to atone for something, that's the only thing I can think of. But I'm not really sure. Hopefully we'll get that explained later on.
I don't know why they're following because I think there's like three of them. There's the chaos dude, and then there's Jack, which is the cab driver, Mark, the mercenary, and then Steven, which in the comics is supposed to be this. He's supposed to be this
Stephen,
rich, flamboyant guy.
yes, Stephen is the
Whereas in this
one that
one,
owns the company.
They made Steven a night clerk essentially, and dimmed his importance
Yes,
down.
that that's why I'm a little confused as to like what, because it is true that one of his personalities does resemble somewhat of that, but that's usually the cab driver.
Yeah, the cab driver seems to be the guy that does the odd jobs.
So I'm a little confused at, I just don't know what they're going to do because that was really the thing I was most concerned about was the split personalities or his different personas that later became his split personalities. Also don't know if we're going to see more of his personalities or see different split personalities
Well,
besides just the mercenary and then Steven.
yeah, well, the one thing that it did make it seem like is that Mark is only accessible as Moon Knight.
Well, Mark is, which I will admit, Mark is the identity of Moon Knight. and then he built all of the other identities afterwards. So in that sense, it does make sense.
Okay.
But then you have, but if that's the case, Steven later becomes, I'm pretty sure, Mr. Knight, which is
Well, with him
Moon
being a
Knight.
night clerk, how's that gonna happen? It's just
Exactly, because Mr. Knight is still the multi-millionaire. He goes around in just a white suit and a mask.
yeah. I've seen the comic. It looks sick, but I don't know how they're
It
gonna pay that
actually
off.
is. So unless he later becomes Mr. Knight, I could
Which I
understand
mean,
it.
they kind of did show it in the trailer to some extent, but it was a simple "you blink and you'll miss it" kind of thing.
So I think it might be possible, but they have a lot of ground to cover in between now and then.
Yeah, I also didn't mind that we were only like when it was only Steven that we were seeing. I didn't mind the whole blackouts before
I
fight
think they did
scenes.
that well.
I think they did that well. I don't want to see it in any other episode though. It does
I
not need to
don't
happen
think we
anymore.
will. I
Since they've
don't think
already
we
explained
will.
it, we don't need to
Yeah,
see it anymore.
I'm really excited to see just how accurately they pull off Mark because he is a very, very dangerous person. So dangerous, he's single-handedly fought Venom to a standstill. He fought Deadpool and won. He's fought Doctor Doom and he's walked away without taking much damage. So the man can hold his own in combat.
I'm trying to
So
find
I'm
out who
ex
the Chaos guy is. Does the Chaos side have a name, or is it just Chaos?
No, I'm pretty sure he has a name. I just
Because I
don't
know there's
remember.
Jack, Steven, and Mark. I just don't know what the Chaos guy's name is.
It's been a while since I've read these. I mostly just went back and watched some videos to be freshen up on details. I read Mr. Knight like 2, 3 years ago. Really enjoyed those, but I hope they bring in characters like the werewolf because that was honestly his first technical villain in comic book
Mhm.
series. So hopefully we get to see him. That would be really cool. I think that would be fun, but I don't think it would tie into. No, I think it could. Instead of him being like a werewolf, he turns into like a dog, like Anubis, just a giant Doberman. That would be pretty nice. They can do a lot with him. He's pretty open. He's got a story, but it's only one story. So they can change it, but it still needs to be the general same with his personalities and his abilities. And hopefully we get to see Mark in control more than just the little bits we saw from the trailer. Hopefully towards the end of this season, Mark is the one that's mostly in control. And now with the scarab, I'm not really sure what the scarab's significance is.
I know what it would be in DC, but I don't know in Marvel. In
But
DC, it would
that's
have
the
been the Blue
thing.
Scarab.
I mean, that's the thing. Since this Steven isn't the multimillionaire, he's not the collector yet. Because Steven was the collector. He would buy ancient Egyptian artifacts and use them. One of my
In well,
favorite is the
yeah,
Bone Knight.
yeah. Which in
Um,
this one, he's not rich at all to do. Yeah, I don't
exactly.
know.
So that's why I'm like, I don't understand the significance of the scarab and how he found the scarab.
So it's not Dunbar or whatever we said. It's Duchamp, which is actually
Duchan, okay.
one of his mercenary friends. I'm just trying to
Okay.
find his Chaos side.
I know, I forget because he does have the four because he has himself. No, it's three, and then the fourth one becomes Mr. Knight.
Okay, so Stephen Grant doesn't become Mr. Knight. It's just the fourth
No,
one is Mr. Knight.
no,
All
yeah.
right.
The fourth persona is Mr. Knight, but it's branched off of Steven.
Okay.
So like they know it's Steven who's Mr. Knight, but no one can do anything because he's some wealthy millionaire and he will just like pay people off or sweep it under the rug. He's like Batman in a way. They think it's possibly this guy, but they have no proof or evidence. Yeah, because with Jake, I'm pretty sure every so often he'll put himself in the insane asylum and then like 2 nights later he'll break himself out.
Sounds about right.
Because I'm pretty sure there's a scene where one of the new doctors comes in and they're like, "So what's wrong with this guy?" They're like, "Oh, he comes to us every so often, comes in, locks himself up, and then he just breaks himself out, and we don't know how because nothing's broken. We don't actually know how he escapes. He just does." Another way he gets away with it is because as Steven, he pays off people inside of the insane asylum to keep him under the radar when he's in there. So it's this whole thing. He is very thought out, very methodical. He plans everything like 10 steps ahead.
which didn't
So,
seem to be what this guy was in this one. Whereas it seemed like the
yeah,
Stephen Grant personality seemed to be a mess up in between what
very
Mark
sporadic and spontaneous.
Mark and some other personality that had a way deeper voice than the Mark personality. So either the Moon Knight personality is a different personality altogether, or there's the Chaos personality, which actually I don't know. See, they don't
No,
explain it.
the third, yeah, the third voice you're hearing inside his head is the moon god. I can't remember his name. That's the third voice you hear in his head.
Okay, well they didn't even explain that.
No, which is why I wanted them to
Khonshu.
explain explain
Okay.
the origin because that's where he gets his orders from.
Well, they need to explain the origins of the guy first, which would have been
Hopefully,
helpful.
I'm really, really hoping they do that in the next, as soon as we meet the girl, we get a little bit of an explanation. And
I
then I
doubt we
hope we
will.
slowly get more, but I doubt we will. And that's what I'm scared about. He needs a explanation. You can't just throw him in.
Well, they've also kind of just. I hope they do the whole thing that I've said before, where it's not we're not just following Steven the whole time. We're also going to be following Mark and Jake, and later on Mr. Knight,
Hopefully,
because
hopefully we get to see more of Mark and he gets to have some control or more control besides just being Moon Knight. You can
yeah,
see Mark as himself, the mercenary Mark.
yeah,
Seeing Jake, I feel like if since he hasn't been mentioned yet, there's a high possibility he won't be mentioned
yeah.
until he realizes or until they explain the backstory of what he was doing.
I mean, the best way that they can explain how Steven is even exists is to have like Mark explain like, okay, I was if they're gonna keep it original, they're gonna go
Yeah,
talk about how like he was on a job and then he got after being left for dead and kind of stuff and dying when
yeah,
he did get brought up by the moon, his mind basically shattered into the four segments that are him, Steven, Jake, and then the chaos part of it.
yeah. Which his mind was shattered a little bit at that point. He also came up with the idea of making those personas and then got confused because he had too many different personalities he was working at one time. So he kind of broke himself with that. But I mean, at this point, because this is kind of the point where Mr. Knight would make an appearance,
Mm-hmm.
because this is seems like the point where he has lost touch which personality is in control and which one's real. So I hope, but I don't see Mr. Knight showing up since this is the Moon Knight
Yeah.
TV show.
I mean,
So
he does make an appearance in the trailer, so I don't know.
yeah, that I mean, I'm gonna have to rewatch the trailer. I don't because I don't remember that. I'll have to rewatch that and
Yeah.
check. So
Well, there's,
because
yeah, I don't,
I mean, Mr. Knight mostly does things as a Bruce Wayne. He doesn't really fight unless he has to. He would go about like talk things out, persuade someone, maybe bribe some people.
Andrew's gonna love him.
Yeah,
Joking. Humor.
yeah. I got
Little
what
humor.
you, yeah.
Little humor there.
A little humor there. Humor, yeah,
Mr. Knight plays off
It,
the
yeah.
money part of the mercenary work. Moon Knight is just solely the mercenary. That's the difference between those two superhero personas.
They didn't really deny any of the problems that we said we might face, but they didn't really confirm any of the good stuff we were hoping for either. So I mean,
Yeah,
it's kind of like it left it still open in the air to
especially
what.
especially with the last scene of hey, let me take control. He takes control, and you don't even get to really see the fight between him and the dog. It's just all of a sudden the dog's on the ground and he's killing it.
And I think the real life reason for it might be because Disney is being kind of cheap on it and doesn't want to pay for everything. They only want to pay for what's needed. Hence
I
why
mean, I suppose.
Stephen
Which
Grant kind
then
of.
also, I also have the question of
But that's like
when he was
just.
blacking out, was he turning into Moon Knight or was he turning into Mark the mercenary?
I think Mark. and then Moon Knight. Well, Mark's mercenary Moon Knight. I have no idea.
Yes, but
See, that's
but
the thing. It
still, was
doesn't.
he? Did he have the whole armor and costume when he was in the town in the village, and he turned
I
into
would
Moon Knight,
say.
or
I
was
would
it just
say
Mark?
no. I would say no. It would be Mark because when he does
That's
have
what
the
I
beetle
would
in
think.
his hand is bloody. Whereas when he's Moon Knight, he's covered in rags. So I don't know. It doesn't really explain that. So
Yeah, that's one thing I was kind of confused about. Also, I mean, his
heck, he could even be Jake.
armor,
Who knows?
it could be. His armor is, or his costume isn't something that just appears. He puts it on just like Batman would with his costume.
No, that's thinking too much into it, Zach.
I mean, you gotta make him a superhero somehow, and
Yeah,
he just appears, apparently,
yeah.
is how it
Or
works.
for whatever I don't know. For whatever reason, they're making it supernatural more into the.
He just becomes a magical girl and just holds up his arms, and then the clothes magically change.
It hasn't really denied anything we've previously stated, and it hasn't really
Confirm anything
confirmed
good.
any of the anything good. It hasn't denied any of the bad. Hasn't confirmed any of the good. It's just there.
Hopefully,
I
hopefully
will say though,
episode 2
it did
will
grab my
turn around.
attention. I will say it did grab my attention more than than all the other shows really did. So
I it brought you in explaining who he was, and then also bringing in the fact of he's going insane, he's seeing things, and then he'll black out and then just have dead people around him. One thing I was confused about is how he woke up and was in, I mean, I guess he fell asleep and then he got a plane and went to wherever he was, and then he woke up as Steven.
I think he got. I think maybe he got thrown out of the roof off the out of the window is what it seems like, and he went
Oh, thrown out the
unconscious,
window, broke his jaw, and then he went unconscious, changed
and then
personalities,
and then
and
Steven took over
but
unknowingly.
that's the thing. He doesn't really have a healing factor. So him just like resetting his jaw, I feel like would be a lot more painful. And he just reset his jaw and was like, "Wow, what happened?" And I'm just like, "What?"
That should have been a little bit more painful, but I mean,
I mean, I understand how he switched personalities. That personality doesn't know what pain happened. He just knows that, oh, my jaw's out of alignment, resets it. And that's one thing that Moon Knight is kind of useful for when he switches personalities. One personality doesn't remember anything about the pain or physical wounds. They just know they have them, but they don't really feel them.
he must have some kind of healing factor because especially when after that he was all scarred and bloody, and then when he wakes up the next time he's in the room.
That's what I'm gonna guess is that they give it because he does have a slight healing factor to like, but it's not something like Wolverine or
Yeah,
Deadpool.
it goes on like the moon's time.
Yeah, it's like a minor healing factor that just heals like scratches, scars, like bruises, maybe
Yeah,
some broken bones here and there, but it's not as intense as Wolverine's or Deadpool's. It's like if you cut your finger, it would take a few days to heal. It would probably take him roughly half the time to heal that. So that's pretty much all that is, I would guess. Still,
not much
I
really else to say other than that. It's just
no, I mean, we got a lot of information out of this episode, but
and it's
nothing explaining what was necessary of
yeah,
how
basically
and
yeah.
why.
It just went through Steven's life and then go to find out that it's this revelation that oh he's got another life when in all actuality I'm just waiting for him to like oh he's got multiple other lives, you know.
I'm waiting for him to meet the moon god and have a conversation with the moon god.
You mean the parrot looking thingy?
Yes, because I feel like it's either once he meets the girl, she's going to explain some of it, but you're going to get the full explanation when you meet him.
I think it's gonna be one of those things where like Mark writes something down and Steven has to read it and he'll
That could
somewhat
also
try
be
to
it.
explain it, which would honestly be the better way out, save
Which
grace.
would make
But
sense because Mark is a very, very intelligent person. But we haven't really seen that, especially since Steven found out that he was hiding secret stashes in his own house.
And they even call him.
But then again, Mark was smart enough to take off his restraints, not step in the sand, and then retape the door after he left to make it
Yeah,
look like he never left. So
it
I'm
doesn't
like,
really explain the limits of this guy. It just shows what possibly he can do.
yeah. Well, from what I remember, he was pretty much top of his class as a mercenary, one of the
Mhm.
best, if not the best, because you have in other comic books, you have like the Punisher even saying, I wouldn't want to face him because he's far more dangerous than me. While I would just stand in the background and shoot someone from a distance, he's like, don't worry, I can take this by myself, go up there and do it all by himself without making a sound. So he
He's
is
more like a ninja Punisher, is what he's more like.
yes, he is extremely skilled in stealth and hand-to-hand combat.
But that's the thing, though. They never, all the trailers and stuff have only been focusing on Steven, not Mark. Steven,
Which
which has me concerned.
honestly it does, but if they have a lot more of Mark and they just didn't show it, that's good advertisement,
I mean,
but
that's good
also bad
advertisement, but
at the
that's
same time because that means a lot of people that know Moon Knight weren't going to go into it like really excited. They were kind of going into it as I'll check it out, see if it's interesting. If it's not and it's an absolute disappointment, then I'm just not going to watch it.
which is kind of
Um,
what we've been doing, to be honest.
yes, yes, 100%. I'm going to watch it solely because he is one of my favorite underrated or not as popular heroes. He only has one, I suppose you can say two comic book runs, but honestly, they're just the same thing. You have Moon Knight and then Mr. Knight, and they flow perfectly together. It's just the two different ones because two different personalities, personas.
Yeah,
And then that's really it. He shows up here and there in other comic book series just once or twice as like a pop-up character, but he's not really that significant, doesn't have that much lore. You see him in, I think, the Marvel game that was on the Wii, the Xbox, and everything, something Alliance, Ultimate Alliance? Yeah,
sounds about
Ultimate
right.
Alliance. He's in I think one or two of those. Actually, I really enjoyed that. I thought that was cool. But other than that, you just don't hear about him.
It's kind of like the Question, kind of like the Creeper as well. I mean, more so like
Yeah.
the Question, because the Question at least got a few runs in the comic books, and that was about it.
hmm
Until like Justice League animated TV show that actually used the character really well.
I don't really know how well this season's going to be, or if season one's going to be like every other season they have for TV shows for Disney's Marvel. It's not going to explain anything until season two.
But it's not going to explain
And then,
anything until the last episode.
yes, and then season two is going to come explain a little bit, but then it's going to stop.
Or trash everything you knew about season one out the window and make you rethink everything. I don't know, but it seems to be following that trend, but hopefully it does not. But it seems to be following that
Hopefully.
trend.
Hopefully.
I
I'm
will say this show did grab people more, but it was more for the possibility of seeing Moon Knight instead of Stephen Grant.
yeah, it was more of the suspense of holy cow, every time this dude blacks out, he's just in the middle of absolutely destroying someone, and he's got blood all over him, dead people, and a gun. And then you get to see Moon Knight at the end, and it's like, okay, now we understand why. Let's watch episode two, see how that turns out. I feel like after episode two, if
Yeah.
episode two doesn't do well, most people are just gonna stop watching.
Yeah, well, episode
Well,
two, what they've
most
got to do.
fans.
Yeah,
Let me rephrase that.
well, what episode two has got to do is it's got to bring in Mark and possibly maybe some of the other ones as well. Bring up like the chaos side.
Well,
I don't know if he has-
it needs to bring in Mark, have Mark explain stuff or enough for you to have an understanding of what's going on.
maybe show some of Jake just working behind the scenes, doing some weird but small things for Mark,
Yeah,
and show that
but
he's been working with them. But it's
Yeah.
Steven, which is they consider the weak one
which
that
baffles me
they haven't.
because Jake would be the weakest link. he's just mostly there for intel. So you would see Jake more than Steven. Steven's just there for the financial support.
Well, in which he doesn't have this time.
Also, I want to know about his mother because
Yeah,
he's called his mother, but she's never
gotten a
on the
letter
phone.
from his mother, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's a postcard, but she's never on the phone. He's just leaving voicemails.
Probably because Mark has to go in and write letters to him separately to keep him out of trouble, which is probably what
Unless
he
Mark
does.
is his mother.
Thinking ahead. No, I'm just kidding. But no, it seems more like that Mark is doing that to keep Steven out of the loop.
Also, I don't understand the fish thing.
Yeah, I don't either.
Did Mark go out and buy a new fish?
I'm assuming so,
Then
but
what
it
happened to the
doesn't.
other fish?
I don't
Well,
know. See, that's the thing.
unless it was because he was gone for 2 days, and during that 2 days the goldfish died, so
I
he
don't
bought a
think
new
so
one.
because the fish was kind of
But
fat anyway.
goldfish are pretty hardy, so in a I have fish at my place, and not feeding them for 1 to 2 days isn't going to kill them. So they can
Yeah,
survive like 2, 3 days without food. So I'm a little confused, unless it was the sprinkles he gave him. No, because that was after he found out that
yeah,
was
and that was
fake.
a new fish. That's what made him turn around.
I'm so confused about the fish. It's not important, but the fish has confused me.
Yeah, this is also starting to show some of the other Marvel shows where everything's starting to blend together. Starting to get to that point where everything's kind of blending together.
Blending together as
As far as
in
like
just
in the
it,
in the apartment wise, everything else
oh,
has kind of been like when he goes other places, it's been kind of a consistent timeline. But the apartment stuff will blend together,
yeah.
as Jack just proved with the goldfish.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure there's much else to talk about for episode one. It's left us asking a lot of questions and concern.
More so
I'm
concerned.
still I'm still going to watch episode two, watch the whole season so that we can do this review.
Yeah,
So I hope it turns out better and asks the majority of the questions we have. Not all of them, obviously, but a good majority, at least the relevant ones about backstory and stuff.
yeah. It's got me concerned, but I don't know. See, I'm hoping, but it's like I'm not expecting a whole lot.
Yeah, as
Had
someone
something.
who doesn't know anything about the story, I can see how it's interesting. I 100% can.
Oh
Because
yeah,
watching episode one, I was like, some of this is pretty cool. I think they did a great job. But as someone who knows the history and everything,
yeah.
I'm mostly left asking questions. And I feel like some of the audience that doesn't know anything would also be asking questions about
Just not
how
as
he
many.
became Moon Knight.
Yeah, just not as many as you, or not as prevalent
Well,
as.
I feel like the main question and concern right now is how did he become Moon Knight and what's with the
What's the deal
split
with all the
personality?
personality? Yeah,
Yes. I feel
how
like
many?
those are the
Yeah,
only questions really they would have. And with that being said, those are the two major questions I have. So hopefully they'll be answered within season one. If not, I'm going to be really disappointed, and I don't know if I would watch the season two if it comes out, because then it would leave me wondering, are you finally going to give me the information I need for season one?
probably not.
Or are you just going to continue on a storyline without giving me a backstory?
I mean, and they did, and then not only have they done that with the Marvel shows, they also did that with the Bad Batch show, where like you were there for like 10 episodes before you actually got an answer as to what Omega was. And even then it was a crappy answer.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it by her name, it makes sense
Yeah, but also
because
why?
I'm 100% guarantee the original name for Boba Fett was Alpha.
Well, probably not, because I
We
remember,
don't
well,
know.
well, in the books they actually make the Knolls first, and then they make Boba, because the Knolls are older. Because the Knolls are like only 2 years old, and they look like they're four. And when Django walks in, he's carrying Boba, and he's like an infant age.
Okay.
So makes you think, okay, so the Knolls were created first as to kind of show both Django and essentially the Republic what they were
Yeah.
buying. Boba wasn't the first clone but he was the clone that was unaltered-ish. He was still altered in stuff like I think in the books it talks about like he's still a little bit taller than Django. He's got some other like smaller things different with him. He's not an exact replica of Django, which in the books he actually does need to go find one of the nulls in order for him to get clone medicine so that way he doesn't die of clone ailments like bad bones and rickets and stuff. The clone aging process, I guess, because even though he
Yeah,
doesn't age twice as fast, he still needs it because of all those cloning
yeah,
problems that he would get. So
reasonable, reasonable. This is why we don't clone people. But back to Moon Knight, I think that's pretty much everything I have
yeah,
for episode 1.
part of me wants to see more. Part of me wants to see more done right. I want to see more. Just I want to see more of it done right instead of just more of this
Yeah.
where they're not really telling us anything. They're showing us a lot of stuff, but they're not really telling us anything about
Hmm.
the character at all, which is
Yeah.
what they've done for a lot of the shows. So
Well, and I feel like they do that because since they're not giving us the history of the character or how the character came to be, it gives them more leeway of them doing whatever they want with the character. And that's what I was really afraid with Moon Knight and his personalities. Since he has different personalities, they can just 100% make one themselves and just have that be the main character. And that's pretty much what they've done, but they've used the name of one of his other personalities in the complete wrong way.
as long as they course correct to some extent and make it so you get to see Mark, Steven, and even Jake later, if Jake is even one of them at all. Because I
Hmm.
mean, they already messed up Steven so much that he's no longer a billionaire businessman
Yeah,
anymore.
it's one
He
of those
is
things of where because they reference he's a mercenary. Where did all of this mercenary money go?
hence the billionaire businessman.
Unless Mark is in control of that right now as well.
Also, I don't like how Steven gets pushed around all the time, but because that doesn't seem like a billionaire businessman kind of persona. But I mean,
Yeah, that's more of a Jake persona, but even with Jake, he's a taxi driver and doesn't
he
put
wouldn't
up
want to
with
get pushed.
anything.
Yeah,
He will 100% push back. So,
yeah.
based on all of these, this isn't really a persona of him.
It's
This
a
is
new
something
one.
Disney made
It's a new
with
one with
an
one of
old
the
name.
names. Yeah,
And that's what I was kind of afraid of with this whole show. A little sad, really disappointed.
kind of like
But
Jonathan Walker at the end of the
that was
Falcon and
someone else.
Winter Soldier.
I never finished Falcon and the Winter
He was
Soldier, and I'm never going to.
don't. The only
I
saving grace of
watched
that
I
thing
watched
was
episode 1, and that was it.
the only thing that was good about that thing was U.S. Agent, and they messed him up later.
They messed him up. They messed up, from what I know, from what you were telling me and what I've heard. What is her name? The daughter of
Agent Carter.
Peggy. Yes, Agent Carter.
They
Messed her up,
they really screwed her up, and it
which
makes no
baffles me
sense.
because she is
It
a
did a
very
complete
she
she
is a
did a
very
complete 180.
important character, very important character in the short comic book series she has with an all-female superhero team.
She does
So
a complete
why?
180. I don't know.
So well, the real question is why did they change it when they have an important character for an all-female superhero team, and that's kind of what they want to have in the first place?
And then they mess up Beer. Kind of mess up. They mess up Baron Zemo. They mess up Zemo by making him like not as calculating. I don't know. They make him more of an anti-hero than they should have. They should have still made him a villain. Should have kept him a villain. I don't know why they.
Who knows?
Yeah,
I
U.S. Agent was the only
the
saving
only
grace,
I'll be
and I
honest,
thought
the
it got
only
real.
TV show
It
the
got
only
real when
TV show
Battlestar died. Yeah.
that I've watched for Marvel all the way through is Loki, and that's because we did a review on it.
Yeah.
I did not watch all of WandaVision. I did not watch any of Hawkeye,
Good for you.
and I watched the first episode of Winter and the Falcon.
I think Hawkeye's the one thing that I was like, that's it. I'm done. I already know it. I already know what happens later. I'm already bored within the first 2 episodes. I don't want to watch anymore. I kind of already know what happens and what I need to know. So I'm good. I don't want to watch anymore. It's like, I
Yeah,
already know you mess up Kingpin later. So, I mean, I don't want to watch any more of it.
I hope this Moon Knight TV show is a diamond in the rough for
It doesn't look
their
like
TV shows.
it
But at the
doesn't look
rate
like
it's going, even though this is just episode 1, I'm going to
it
give
looks like it's
episode
going to be
2
better.
a shot. I feel like it has the potential, but it's not there. It's not like, I mean, if they could just do anything of what Netflix did with like Daredevil, Luke Cage.
No,
If
that
they
would
could
take.
just do anything like that, I feel like they would have a great TV show.
Well, see, that's the thing. That would take creative. That would take some creativity, and Disney
No,
doesn't have that right now.
that would take heart, and Disney
Yeah, that
doesn't have a heart.
and they never. Well, they never did. Not since Walt died.
Disney has just become too power hungry.
The company, not the man.
Yes, the company. Too power hungry. They have a monopoly pretty much, and they know it, and they will do whatever they want with it because they know someone's going to watch
We watch it, so you don't have to.
it.
For the 5 of you
We
watching,
suffer, so you don't have to.
for the 5 of you watching,
And for those of you, I'm sure, who are asking, even though I'm sure very few of you are asking, we aren't going to give this a rating until the whole season's over. And we're just going to give an overall rating of the whole season, not episode by episode. I think it would kind of be pointless to do it episode by episode when you can just do it for the whole season at one time.
you want to kind of look at it in hindsight, whereas something might make
Yes.
you very mad in the first episode. You might realize in hindsight it was really good for the second episode. I
Yes,
don't think that's going to be the case for this, but it works
It's
better that
possible.
way
It
when
could,
you watch
yeah,
the whole season.
it could raise our rating or lower it by that time. We don't know.
Yeah.
So we're going to wait till the end. And with that said, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for sticking with us. If you do want to watch this, I would say watch it as kind of an action sci-fi. But if you want the actual storyline of Moon Knight, I would say just go for the comic book series. It's really in depth. It is wonderful, a great read, highly recommend it. Tune in next time as we go over the next part of the Moon Knight series.